The YouTube algorithm is going to be so broken by this transcript because it's going to try to deliver this to either the alt-right or the alt-left or the independents, and it's not going to know where to distribute this content. Meg, we're breaking the system. Welcome to Fulfillment Project, everybody. Today, my guest is Meg Keene. Meg founded A Practical Wedding, the largest independent wedding publication in the English language. She built it into an 8-figure business, served as editor-in-chief for 15 years, which is crazy to me because that means she went from blogging to Pinterest to Instagram influencers, navigating all of that change in the industry, which is all of us listening can identify with mergers and acquisitions, new technology, adapting S&P or something crazy like that. So wild that Meg did that. She sold over 150,000 books along the way. Why not? She's a novelist and essayist, the writer behind Field Notes for the Brave on Substack, which is where I found her, where she takes on sex, money, and power without flinching. I love her straightforward personality. Meg is one of a kind. Meg, welcome to Fulfillment Project.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
This is going to be a treat for the audience. I'm already expecting marking it explicit when I upload it to Spotify.
Okay, good. So I don't have to keep it clean.
Let it rip.
All right.
Let it rip.
Let's go.
Make cool shit is your motto. What's the coolest shit you're working on this week? Lightning round, 30 seconds.
I mean, my coolest shit is always fiction, I think. I do have some meetings with the ADL, the Jewish Anti-Defamation League, and that is cool. But I will say my coolest shit is I am working on revising a little bit of my prior novel, and I decided to have a meet cute at a shooting, like the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So, which we're not making light of. I love writing about my own trauma, but yeah, that's my cool shit this week.
Oh, and I just saw one of the front page posts on your Substack was something about the White House Correspondents' Dinner, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wrote an essay about the left having a political violence problem. So and I survived 9/11. I don't, but sometimes you have to take your trauma or trauma in general and repurpose it. So, yeah. It's weirdly, this scene is like very dark, but weirdly fun, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, well, and it seems like people are responding to you on the internet. So it's unique to see how people interplay with that. 3 words your husband would use to describe your work.
Oh, my work or me?
Ooh, your work was the question, but you may be even more fun.
I'll go with me because that's the answer I know. He always says I make everything fun, which is the nicest compliment. I know. That I'm loving and that I'm creative. So my internet trolls are really convinced that my husband wants to divorce me, even though we've been together 21 years, but that's what he would say. So his words.
I love that. I'll take his word for it. Most overrated piece of wedding advice still floating around on the internet.
I mean, I don't all of it. I was able to make a career because like so much of the wedding advice was so terrible. Though, you know what? I'll go like reverse my own brand here. I saw on X this week, someone claiming that people that spent under $1,000 on their wedding were most likely to stay married. And I was like, first of all, that's like, you just got the marriage license. Like, I don't even like.
Yeah, can you even get that for $1,000?
Right, I was like, so you got the marriage license and like you ate dinner. My guess is those people are like religious fundamentalists, and maybe they like aren't allowed to get divorced. Anyway, I was like, that's ridiculous advice. I spent so long in the wedding industry. I can actually honestly say that how much you spend on your wedding has no relation to how long you stay married, either way.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings when we were getting ready to be married 11 years ago was focus on the marriage, not the wedding. Of course, the wedding is a great fun party day, all that, but like the marriage is what matters.
Correct.
One book every couple should read before they get married.
Oh, man. So one of my books has a series of like questions to ask before you get married, which I did not think were particularly deep, but so many people have said it was the best part of the books. You're welcome, I guess. I would actually say a book about money. Any book that makes you like really deal with your own like money traumas and money anxiety. Not because I think marriages fall apart over money necessarily, but I think it's such a huge aspect of building a life together. And people like fail to have those conversations early and then are trying to clean up. So
Yeah, I love that. Finish this sentence. The bravest thing I've ever done with my writing is
I mean, I don't hold back very much. Actually, you know what? I'll go with a week and a half ago when I went on record about uh the publishing industry having a Jewish problem, and I have a op-ed that's like out in the world trying to find its home. And I was really risking my career getting canceled, or just like destroyed. I thought it was going to light my career on fire, and instead it led to like all of these amazing meetings and like the beginnings of opportunities. So, um, lesson is I think that when you like gag yourself and refuse to speak about something, it's hard to speak about anything honestly. So,
mm. Where can people find that op-ed if they're looking for it?
so the op-ed itself is not out yet. The one I wrote, the interview I did, which went viral, is pinned on the top of my X feed, and I'm just Meg Keene on X.
Perfect. I'll link that in the show notes for people to go to. In my prep for this interview, I thought about diving in there, but I knew you already did the whole interview about it. So I thought if we can touch on it as it becomes relevant through the convo, but if people want in
Okay.
depth, they can go there.
If the op-ed is out by the time this comes out, it'll be in the show notes. Just check.
Boom. There we go. The working definition of brave. So a lot of writers wave the brave flag, and they're not really brave. They're just contrarian, they're stubborn, they're kind of attention grabbing. How do you define brave, Meg?
Oh, so this I have an answer for. My grandfather, who my son is named for, was a prisoner of war in Japan. He's ended up his career as a Marine Corps colonel, but he was a prisoner of war in Japan during World War II, which is something we kind of gloss over in America because we became allies afterwards. But he was on the death ships, which people don't really know about, which were basically like concentration camps at sea. Um, and
Well, I've never heard of that.
Oh, look it up. It is, I mean, it's unreal. Almost nobody survived. Um, and he was then in the prisoner of war camps, which were very close to concentration camps, but um, without like industrialized killing, but they were trying to kill everyone. Anyway, obviously the bravest person in our family. And he always said that, before this was like sort of a popular aphorism, he always said that being brave doesn't mean that you're not afraid. Being not afraid just means you're dumb. That being brave means being afraid and doing something anyway. So I grew up with that idea.
Wow. That connects to, and I think a lot of people need to hear this message, and maybe we unpack this a little more right now, Meg. My son was riding his bike. A car was coming, so he went off to the side of the road. There was a ditch at the side of the road, and it had just rained, so there's water down there. This is like a couple days ago.
Right.
And so he gets caught, his brakes, he can't catch the brakes. He goes down the ditch, rides through the water, and I tell him afterwards, hey, I'm so proud of you, buddy. Like, you rode through it and you got wet and soaking and all of that, but you were so brave. I used the word brave. And he said, Dad, I wasn't brave. I was scared. And I said, just because you're scared doesn't mean you're not brave.
Yep.
If you feel scared and you run away, that might mean you're not brave. But if you feel scared and you continue forward anyway, that's a sign of bravery. True or false? How could I have fleshed that out? What do parents need to hear? What do people need to hear about bravery, Meg?
I mean, what my grandmother really said is like, if you're not afraid, like one, you're probably like your assessment may just be off, right? Like if your son had been like, oh, super, I'm gonna love going through this ditch. I'm gonna do it
Yeah.
on purpose, right? Like my grandfather also would be like, I will never jump out of a plane unless I'm making combat pay. He was like, he was like, sorry, I don't do that stuff for fun. My risk assessment is that it's not fun. and I've had to do it for not
Yeah.
reasons, right? Um, but yeah, being scared is like just appropriate risk assessment, right? And
Hmm.
then you have a choice. And I have actually, and this is sort of being a Jew in the past few years, but I have been I've always known that like my personality is like on the edges of the bell curve, right? In certain ways. Like I take risks that other people don't, I'm outspoken in a way that other people aren't. Took me a long time to come to terms with that. And see it as a good thing. But like I know that. But in the past few years, I have really been stunned at sort of how not brave most people are, how much people will not say something unpopular, even if the
Hmm.
risk to them is like a social risk, or they're, it might be awkward, or their friends might, not be happy. And realizing that, I can like look back at history and be like, oh, now I kind of understand better why various terrible things happen, because you're like, well, all these people could have stepped in and said something. But the ability to like actually take even risks that are not huge doesn't come easily to a lot of people. And I think it's a really important quality that we should be encouraging in our kids. So, and I was raised with a dad who really encouraged it. So I didn't like, yeah, it's my personality, but I didn't like pull it out of thin air either.
Hey, everyone. Quick 10-second ask from you. If you're digging the show and you're watching on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up and comment your favorite part. If you're listening on Spotify, please give this show a 5-star rating. On iTunes, please leave a quick review. If you're listening on Substack, please subscribe and join the comments. You may want to subscribe in a few different places. For example, YouTube, you get all of our short content, 60-second to 90-second clips, our segments where we segment out 1 to 6 minute different segments of each episode. And then if you subscribe on the Substack, I summarize the episode in a newsletter. You can read it in a couple minutes. And then a couple days after the episode, I put out a self-reflection guide to help you personalize the content to your life. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Please share it with a friend. Right on. Can you think of specific ways your dad would encourage it? I'm mostly just interested to steal some
Yeah,
of his
I
ideas for
mean,
my own fatherhood.
well, it was interesting. I don't know if you only have a son, but my dad would say
I've got 2 boys.
in the
Yeah, no girls.
I have one of each. In the sort of like, I don't know how this lands in the gender discourse at the moment, but like in the 80s, in 90s, my dad would say that he tried to, me and my sister tried to raise us like more like boys. And I think that it worked in a lot of ways, in that he really raised us to like stand our ground and say what we think, and not like, not be demure. And I have so many conversations with women now, particularly around stuff like marriage, where they're like, well, women are just like not socialized to hold their ground. And I really kind of was socialized to hold my ground. And I think that's been incredibly helpful for me. But my dad, actually, here's, I mean, I'm Jewish now, and I converted when I was very, very young, a very young adult. But this is the famous example. My dad was, I grew up very religious, like in sort of a liberal, mainstream Protestant setting. And my dad was like super, like learned, basically, would like write all the Bible quizzes, was like a published religious scholar
Yeah.
in his own right. So we talked a lot about theology. We would literally have theologians like visit our house and sit around the table. And so we were driving to Sunday school, and I said, like, what if God doesn't exist? Which is funny because I've never been an atheist. But I was like, what if God doesn't exist? Like, if God doesn't exist, like, how does that sort of like impact all of this? And my dad, of blessed memory, said to me, I don't know. Why don't you ask your Sunday school teacher? Which is how I got kicked out of the Sunday school in the 5th grade.
No, what kicked out? To me, that's one of the most foundational questions and by the way, it's like there's proof for it, but the proof isn't like really tangible. Like I'm a believing Catholic. So I'm like, I know it to be true, but like I love to meditate on that,
I
and like
mean,
all the links of creation and at like but what if there isn't? My whole
What?
life is based on this. And
I mean, it seems like a foundational it shows I was engaging with the material, like, that's for sure. That teacher already didn't like me because the first I vividly remember this, the first class of the year, I pointed out that she had a double negative on the board, which she which she did, and I thought would be helpful, and she did not find it
yeah,
helpful, so we were we were already
you're either getting extra credit or getting kicked out. And it
exactly.
was the latter for
It
you.
was the latter. It was the latter. But, that's a very it's like a very Jewish parent thing to do, which is funny because I always like my dad kind of I think he could have been a Jew. He has a Jewish soul. But, I have 2 kids and I encourage them to we're practicing, but I encourage them to ask questions. Right now, one of my kids doesn't believe in God. And I'm like, all right, let's engage on that. I'm not gonna like force the question. Like, I'm not gonna force beliefs. Like for me, and I think this shows up in my writing, for me, asking the question is more important than having an absolute answer. And in fact, I think absolute answers generally in life are a red flag because things are not absolute. So the minute that someone's like, I absolutely know this is the absolute
Yeah.
truth, like you should be like, "Mm,
Yeah. Well, and even if there is absolute truth, like, say, gravity, which is the
right,
classic example, people encounter gravity in different ways. Walking and falling on your head are two different ways to encounter gravity. And I think the same with spirituality and religion. Like, maybe something can be true, but people are encountering it from a whole uh, array of perspectives.
yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
So, gender discourse, this is something funny. And as a prolific writer, I mean, I'm on Substack, but I wouldn't say I'm a writer. I just happen to be a person on Substack. You're a writer. So you said these words a second ago. I'm not sure how this fits in with gender discourse. And then you talked about how your dad raised you
yeah.
more like boys intentionally during the 80s. And not to stick on gender specifically, but it's so funny to me. And one reason probably this podcast will never get huge is because I feel like I just like to ignore all that stuff. Whenever people stay in lanes of allowable language, it closes down so many avenues of curiosity.
Correct.
And what's your take on that as a writer? How do you navigate that? You put out that piece on or no, you wrote the op-ed that hasn't been released yet, and you're like worried it's going to cancel your career. Could have canceled your career, it didn't. But like, you're clearly thinking about this.
Yeah, I mean, I I publish a lot of things that scare me, right? Like I wrote an essay, you can find it on my Substack. It's called Burn Away Everything But the Truth, which is about sort of my own cancellation of myself when Jewish CEOs started getting their careers destroyed in 2020. And I stepped back because I didn't feel like at that moment. And to be fair, I don't think I could have coped with that at that moment. We had very young kids. We were in like,
Yeah.
there was a very severe shutdown. Our kids were not doing well. Um, and my business was already struggling. And I don't think that I could have taken like a personal cancellation on top of that. But it led to a rough few years of feeling like because the discourse was the way it was, because I built a very progressive audience, because I was a Jew and a Zionist, that I couldn't open my mouth, without everyone hating me. And getting back to Substack, I made a promise to myself that I was only going to say things that were true, like true for me, right? I was only going to be honest, which doesn't mean that I'm going to tell you everything about everything, right? Like as a long time writer in the public space, I've gotten very good at making you feel like you're getting a lot of access to my life or my brain or whatever. But I'm very thoughtful about, what I share. Like, the joke is that people think they know all about my marriage, but mostly what they know about my marriage is that I am married, you know? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I think being historically on the left, there has been, and published during the 2010s, which was really, really the cancel culture era. Um, I have certainly come to the point that I do not like the policing of language. I do not like sort of any policing of thought. Ironically, I feel like the people that are fighting book bans are also the people that are fighting to get books they disagree with or by authors they disagree with not published, which is actually worse than book banning because it's like book banning you can't even ban a book that didn't get published.
The most foundational level. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really think that, um, so the podcast I was on about Jews in publishing, which you can find, it'll be in the show notes. The host, Phoebe Maltbovy, who also writes on Substack, said, I'm in favor of more books. In favor of more books on every subject from every perspective, whether or not I agree with them. And that's really where I come down on it as well. Like, I just want to hear from more perspectives. And I can tolerate not disagreeing with someone, and I can tolerate not disagreeing with someone and still respecting them and having that right. Like there are plenty of people and that feels like a little bit of a lost art right now.
Big time, big time. And it's funny because I associate and I wasn't expecting to go down this channel, but I kind of want to test out this new thing I want to try. And it just occurred to me that this could be an area to use it. So I've associated the left with banning certain types of speech and categorizing people in groups. You mentioned the book thing, which I feel like is associated more with the right.
Right. I mean, I think there's...
Who's more to blame?
Who's more to blame?
Not that we have to blame anybody.
Kill Mary Beth. You will. I think that there is a lot of horseshoe theory. A lot of the political ends of the political spectrum sort of meeting back. You can see this in my comments in X sometimes where like a right-wing anti-Semite and a left-wing anti-Semite will be like screaming at each other. I generally ignore it, but at one point someone was like, "This is art."
Oh my gosh.
It's an old school anti-Semite meeting a new convert and they disagree. But book bans exist from like on the right, within schools, certainly like in places like Texas.
Can I interrupt you real quick? I want to try this. So I've got Claude pulled up.
Okay.
Because I want to do real life fact checking. I got called out. I had a vegan on and I don't know anything about plant-based diets. And apparently neither did he. And YouTube slayed us. So I thought, well, I have the power of AI at my fingertips. Why don't I do this? So I don't think books have been banned in schools, but that's a common thing you hear. So I want to put it to the test. What? You just said books were banned in Texas.
Yeah,
what
books in schools
banned Texas schools? Let's see what my boy Claude has to say here.
Put Jeopardy music. Editor, put in Jeopardy music.
Yeah, Ricky, pipe it in, baby. My man, Ricky.
Hey, it's me, Editor Rick. Due to copyright laws, I cannot play the Jeopardy theme in this moment, but I did find something on Vato Elements, royalty-free. It's got the clock ticking thing like Jeopardy, but not quite Jeopardy. Different tone. Certainly different tone. Anyways, back to the episode. Enjoy.
Thinking. Okay, it's looking.
Boom.
Second, 1,738 banned books concentrated in 7 districts.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually have a friend who's a teacher in Texas, and she was like, we had to pull all, like, it's also like teachers are like not only pulling these books, but then they pull other books that they're like, might also have a problem. And look, some of the books, sometimes it's like reasonable. You're like, I read something about a book that was banned because it like talked about prostitution. And I was like, yeah, I think it's fine. But apparently it often impacts like authors' income in that if they end up on a ban list in a state, then they can't like come speak to schools. Like do all this other
Yeah.
auxiliary stuff that middle grade authors do to make money. So that is book ban.
So I just asked a follow-up question. Do the books have anything in common? And it kind of iterated what you just said. A lot of the books are about identity content involving sexuality, gender, race, sexual content, or depictions of sexual violence, and originally written for adults that they're packaging for kids. So with that context, I'm a little okay with it.
Some of them, I am like, we can debate whatever, but like, I don't know. I was a honors kid. Like some of those books were like on honors reading curriculum in high school. I have my international baccalaureate diploma and it's run out of Switzerland, and like they assign reading, and like if you can't read The Bluest Eye, but you can't read 1984, like you're in trouble. And I think it's similar in that, especially when we get to high school age kids. When we get to high school age kids, I really believe that our job is to give them access, free access to ideas, and then engage with them about those ideas, right? So anyway, so that exists on the right. And then on the left, we have, actually, this is happening today, R.F. Kuang. She's a #1 New York Times bestselling author, and she has a book coming out. So R.F. Kuang is a #1 New York Times bestselling author. She has this book coming out, and there's a 2-page scene with a character who's Israeli, and now like the left is trying to cancel her. She's very like virulently anti-Israel. She doesn't let her books get published in Israel, whatever. But now the left is trying to like cancel her and cancel that book. If I had to make a prediction, I would guess that those 2 pages will end up pulled from the book, which, like, if that's not censorship, I don't know what is. So I think we have this existing in like different forms on the right and the left, and the right and the left um are not able to see that they're doing this, that like actually these things are the same. Actually, it's the same picture. So
Yeah. Yeah. The YouTube algorithm is going to be so broken by this transcript because it's going to try to deliver this to either the alt-right or the alt-left or the independents, and it's not going to know where to distribute this content. Meg, we're breaking the system. But I think we have 3 things going on here. Sorry, I interrupted you.
no, I was just gonna say, welcome to my life. I do. Someone said, like, if you don't, to me on X today, like, if you don't take a strong extreme position, no one will read your stuff. And I was like, well, it's proving that refusing to take an extreme position and refusing to completely side, like being heterodox is now considered an extreme position, and people will listen to you because they're like, nobody else is saying it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it just proves the nuance of every scenario. Like in that first Texas book ban situation, it seemed like most of those were sexually explicit books or gender identity based books versus your example, which was a nationalism/religion based book. It just seems like some things can be true at the same time, or some things can be true and false. Like maybe, well, let me ask you the question. Would it be okay for some books to be banned? For example, some stuff is inappropriate for younger kids, but to your point, this was the third point I was trying to remember. High school kids, it's of course, as you get older, more things are appropriate than younger kids, know, and there's a difference between nationality-based things, having a character be Israeli, and teaching a younger student about transgenderism or sexually explicit content. Like those 2 things to me you can't say book banning and cover those 2 things in the same quadrant. Those are different quadrants to me.
There's a lot of nuance, and I think a lot of things can be true at once. I mean, that is, I think, really where I come down on everything, is that like it's not even nuance, it's that a lot of things can be true at once. Like when my son was like in this phase of wearing gowns at school, like having books in the classroom that like made him look like a normal kid, like boys who wore dresses or whatever, were really helpful. And at the same time, I can say that I think in a lot of ways our schools are sort of like pushing a very narrow ideology. And I don't think that's appropriate. So, my kids will come home sort of parroting, we live in a really left-wing area, parroting all of these things, and then we we're sort of trying to teach moderation and critical thought at home, and asking questions, which we try to do whether or not we agree with the position, because I don't want my kids learning absolute positions and then taking them as true, even if I agree with them. So,
Yeah. Well, and even absolute positions, even if I believe them, I think that's such a great point, because sometimes we believe something because we were told something. Like, I believe a lot of stuff still to this day that my parents told me. And it's like, well, why do I believe it? Well, because my dad told me, in
like
fact.
if you
And then
turn
someone questions
on
you.
the light inside the car, they will arrest you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Apparently, that was always a lie.
I just learned something new. I thought I still don't turn the lights on.
He was a mass
But
lie perpetrated.
it's like, even if you do believe it, I want to know why these things are true, you know? And so even like, I think some parents, because their parenting's really hard. I don't know if you know that, but
Yeah,
it's really hard.
not that
And
easy.
because you're tired, you don't want to have to go through this extra exercise with your children of like, well, let's go through why I believe what I believe, or why we believe what we believe. And parents might feel a pressure to be God, small g figures to their kids. Like, I
Right.
know everything, mom and dad know everything. When really it's like, dad's still trying to figure it out. You know, it's like, and even this podcast, I feel like I'm fumbling around a little bit because I don't have a great grasp of these topics, and I'm still continually trying to learn.
Right. I mean, I have older kids now. God, that feels so weird to say, but my son's 13, and super, super bright. And so he asks a lot of, I mean, we were in the car driving to a bar mitzvah, and he was like, let me tell you a little something about experimental physics.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then was like, so I can't even describe it now. We were going by the Stanford Linear Accelerator, and he was like, have you ever thought about like the space-time continuum, and if you drop a marble, and my husband was like, oh, look up this when we, but I was like, no, I hadn't thought. But he has a lot of good questions and a lot of complicated questions now, which I really enjoy. That's part of parenting I'm good at. And I just want my kids to think critically. And so even if I agree with something, I want them to not take it as absolute fact because I think it, right? I mean, obviously, we feel very strongly about Israel in this family. Um, my husband and I were in Israel last summer. They go to summer camp that's essentially Zionist. Um, but I want them to come to I don't want to feel like I brainwashed my kids about anything. I actually took my son to see Omar Shem Tov, who was a hostage in Gaza for 400 days and is now on a speaking tour. Amazing. If you get a chance, like such an inspirational, like, I mean, my son had to leave early. He was crying, but he was like, I don't understand how he can have gone through what he went through and like be so
Wow.
full of light. And like, so like, he was like, I don't want you to take darkness away from this. I want you to take hope. But his feelings about being a Jew and Israel and whatever really, I think, changed and like solidified and whatever during that talk. But at the same time, I want to present him true, not propaganda, but true like counter arguments and counterfactuals. Um, because I mean, one, if you're gonna ever be able to like defend a position, you need to be able to know what the counter arguments are. But also I want him to ask me hard questions, and I mean, yeah, sure, in this case, I know what I would like him to feel, but he really needs to come to that on his own. And he needs to come to that on his own with like a broad understanding of the facts. So, and that means that's like barking your children safe from joining a cult, right? Like if your kids know how to question absolutist statements, even ones you believe in, they're much less likely to get sucked into a cult, whether that's like, they go to college and they end up in some like, doing protests in right without really thinking through what they're protesting, or like a
Yeah.
genuine cult. So yeah, critical thinking. it's underrated.
You said two things there that I want to highlight. One, critical thinking, making space for it, making room for it, and encouraging it. Information is becoming so cheap. School used to be all about knowing information. Now information is everywhere, even more so with AI. So the critical thinking component is going to be, I think, a big value maker in the future of society. How do we assimilate information? How do we critically think about it? And what outputs do we deliver based on the information at the tips of our
Yeah, the
fingertips?
CEO of Palantir, his name is escaping me at the moment, said something like the people that are going to do the best. I mean, Peter Thiel, I believe, said like it's the word people who are going to come out of this the best. He was like the numbers people are going to be in trouble, but the word people might be okay. And then the CEO of Palantir said something like the people that are going to do well are people that like don't. He said basically like neurodivergent, like whatever. But he basically was saying like weirdos. Like he was basically saying like people that don't think in straight lines, people who aren't like in the box. And I turned to my husband and I was like, I'm gonna do just fine. Like no one's gonna mistake my writing for AI writing. It's like all over the place. It's like dense. It's complex. It circles back on itself. It disagrees with itself. But yeah, so I think that's going to be critical, and that is going to bias towards really smart people, like people with really high IQs, as if the world wasn't biased towards those people already. But yeah, being able to like think outside the box and like pick something up and view it from a different perspective, um, and start your own shit, and all of that is going to be like I think the most critical. That or like working with your hands. Go one or the other. One way or the other.
The other thing you said is your son asked some crazy question about dropping a marble in the space-time continuum
Okay.
and wonder. Because everything is so instant, you have Netflix, YouTube, AI, everyone thinks that they need a delivery mechanism immediately. And I think there's so much power in imagination and in your son just like wondering about there probably is an answer. You punch that puppy in and you'll get an answer of what would happen or what the theory is. But instead of getting the answer, why not? Who cares if the answer's out there? I want to understand it. I want to wrestle with it. There is value in the wonder component.
Correct. Correct. Jews are referred to as the people who wrestle with God. And I think that Jews also tend to be, but this is a value for me more broadly, is like people who wrestle with ideas. And he knew, I mean, he knows a lot about experimental physics, apparently. Um, I mean, this is the kid who was like doing algebra voluntarily in the car when he could barely speak. Like he couldn't say full sentences.
Whoa.
He would be like, I'm doing big math in his car in his booster seat once. He was like, Mommy, have you ever thought what 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 is? And I was like, I have not. And he said, I think the answer is 45. He said, it's 45. I was thinking of it because, Mama, how many candles do you need for all of Hanukkah? And he came.
Oh my gosh.
So, and he was like, his like sentence structure was full. So anyway, this is, I actually, it's only because I'm on a podcast that I try to not like talk about him too much in public, but because brag about your kids. But no, I mean, he's a brilliant kid. And so he apparently has been reading about or watching videos about experimental physics for fun. But we refuse to give them phones until high school. They have, computers and they can search and whatever. But he had no ability. And I think this is really important. And even in high school, it will be very limited. Having worked on the internet for a long time tends to make you conservative on these issues. But he had no ability to like pick up his phone at 13 and like Google it. We were in the car and all he could do was like talk to me about it and ask questions.
Yeah. Oh, great point.
And I think that results in better thought, right? I'm taking 2 Stanford classes right now for creative writing. And when I learn, I like read the material, I highlight, and then this is just how I learn. I copy important passages down, and I don't necessarily ever go back and look at them, but that's like, I know that's part of my learning process. And like, you can't replace that with just like typing something into Claude and right, like, and getting an answer. Even when I use ChatGPT or Claude, I tend to like write things down and then like because I'm trying to learn it, right? Like that's the point.
Yeah. Of course, of course. But I think this is a new thing that society has never had to learn because you've always had to learn information. But now the information's there. So what do you do when you know when you have the information? How do you bypass that and take the next step?
Right.
Uh,
You can't. I mean, you have to like learn how to synthesize, which I think arguably is why, you know, at least for people who are going to go like have access to higher like elite education, which my husband and I both certainly have like elite degrees. He's the one who went to Stanford, not me actually. But elite degrees are really about, and for everyone that's mad, um, lots of non-elite degrees as well, but not like community college. My dad taught at community college for a lot of his career. Community college is built to like teach you algebra, teach you how to be a dental hygienist, right? Like teach you information and then put you out in the world. And liberal arts education, even if it's in the sciences, is taught is about teaching you how to think, right? Like I went to NYU Tisch, my husband went to Stanford. You go to those places and they're they don't care about like you learning just the facts. It's about how to think about it, how to debate about it, how to wrestle with it. And I think in the era of AI, that's going to become incredibly valuable, like the most valuable tool. And as I'm taking 2 classes right now, one in person on the Stanford campus and one like through Stanford, at higher ed or Senate ed or whatever, but on
yeah.
Zoom. And I am reminded by how much we also learn being physically in the room with other people and how much more complex like exchange of ideas it is, especially in a group when you're in the same room. So I think that's going to be hard to replicate also.
Ooh, exchange of ideas in a group.
Mhm.
Totally. Totally. I just had a podcast conversation this week, actually, it was just released. He said business lunches used to be a thing. It's where you got to know your colleagues, and business lunches don't exist anymore. And you just said something I hadn't considered that correlates, which is learning together, being in learning groups is matters.
Well, and I mean, I would agree with him on business lunches and like you gotta just make them happen. Um, but there's a lot that's been written, like people smarter than me on this topic about Capitol Hill and our politics and how some and this has been happening over, 20, 30 years. Um, Things have fallen apart in a way because there used to be a culture on Capitol Hill that you literally like had lunch with your colleagues across the aisle, that you played golf with them, that you were friends with them, that you saw
Yeah.
them as people, right? And so then when you have to negotiate a budget bill or whatever, you're not seeing them as the enemy. You're seeing them as like, that is Joe, who I've had a million lunches with, and I've been to his house and whatever, and we disagree on this. And so we're going to have to like
Yeah.
come to the physical table. And when that stops being part of the culture, I think things really fall apart.
Wow. Great point, Meg. Great point. I wonder if that's one of the ingredients. All right. I want to pivot here. I want to try this new thing again. I'm
You're
digging
gonna
this
fact
because not
check.
fact check. I'm switching. This is a hard pivot.
All right.
You've said this a couple of times. The word Zionist. I want to look it up
Sorry.
and see what it means and then see if that matters.
Claude, it will just Claude's interface. I use ChatGPT and I know I need to switch, but this interface is that's pretty open-ended.
I should have said definition. Political and ideological movement emerged in the late 19th century Europe, advocating for the establishment and now the support and preservation of a Jewish homeland in the historical land of Israel. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I would say that specifically, it's always important to note that Zionism doesn't mean support or not support or anything about any current government. I mean, I also would say that Israel is held to a double standard in that we're not debating like Jordan was formed at exactly the same time. It was Transjordan, right? And we're not debating if Jordan has a right to exist. So, yeah, Zionism it was a 19th century movement. Theodor preferred soul was really like is the name that's associated with it. And yeah, it's about the Jew. I mean, Jews have always lived in Israel, but have a great diaspora and were in Europe, and other parts of the Middle East. And as it was about the 2,000-year desire for Jews to return to Zion, to Israel. And there was a counter movement, the Bund, which was about here-ness, like settling in the diaspora. And that unfortunately basically ended in the Holocaust with 6 million Jews dead. So Jews generally considered that that was a failed experiment. So yeah, it's Israel's existence. There's arguments among Jews that we should maybe just phase out the word Zionist altogether because Israel already exists and is a fact, and we shouldn't treat it like it's a question. But yeah, that's what it means.
So, two questions. I don't know where this is going to lead, but I'm just so curious because I think you're the first Jewish convert I've ever talked to. So, you grew up Protestant in a very Protestant household, you said.
Mhm.
How did you discover it? What made you convert? And then second question is being Jewish necessarily Zionistic, or is being a Zionist separate from being a Jew?
The first question is, or the second question is easy, so I'll answer that. People will say this is not true, but it absolutely is. Judaism is like both a tribe of people. It's primarily like an ethnicity or a tribe that accepts converts on a really limited basis. And that tribe is about this native land, and the entire religion centers around this land and like literally like the agricultural seasons. And like a lot of Jews don't know this, we pray towards Jerusalem. I actually have a sign in my house. It's called a mizrach. It says east in Hebrew because we face east when we pray, because we're facing the ruins of the second temple in Jerusalem. So I think being a Zionist and a Jew are like inseparable. The convert question. So I'm going to lead with this. It's a totally appropriate question. I'm totally going to answer it, but I'm going to lead with a fun fact because a lot of people don't know this. You could not ask me that question if you were a Jew, because Jews are not allowed to ask or even to like sort of admit that or talk about people being converts. Because once you convert, you're considered like completely and fully part of the tribe. And so the most often like repeated commandment or mitzvot in the Torah is basically that you don't mock or bother or whatever the convert. So
Ooh, no way.
yeah,
I had no
as a
idea.
convert, if I'm in a conversation with Jews, I can bring up that I'm a convert and then we could have a conversation about it, but they cannot. And there are times that I've reminded people when they tried to pull some sort of like, I'm not a convert, so I have a better Jew card than you do. And I've been like, actually, by trying to pull that card, you just proved that you don't.
Strike out.
Strike, failed the test. So I'll give you the short version of this I think it's fascinating story, regardless of the fact that it's about me, but people rarely ask this. So the teaching in Judaism, first of all, is that um, if you're a convert, you're born with a Jewish soul, and you were at Sinai when the Torah was given out, and that your particular soul chose a different path on earth and chose the path of having to find their way home. Sorry, I got actually chills saying that. So that that there are more Jewish souls than there are Jewish families. I think this has to do with like miscarriages, actually, the idea that I'm not sure, but the idea is there's more Jewish souls than there are Jewish families. So some Jewish souls choose to be born into non-Jewish families because their soul has the assignment of finding their way home. So I went to preschool at the local Jewish temple. We did not live in a Jewish area. My husband went to the same preschool, which is even crazier. We lived in an area with almost no Jews. And my best friend, this story is going to sound like I was surrounded by Jews, and I was not. My best friend in kindergarten was Jewish. And when she enrolled in Hebrew school in first grade, I went home and told my mom, that, and mind you, I went to Sunday school like every Sunday of my life. I went home and I told my mom that I was Jewish and that there had been a mistake and that I had to be signed up for Hebrew school because I was going to be behind on my alphabet if I didn't start immediately. And by the way, I am absolutely behind on my alphabet. So it was a fight in our house.
It's your mom's fault.
Yeah,
Blame
exactly.
your mom.
It was a fight in our house for like 2 weeks. And I was like, you need to go tell the rabbi that there's been a mistake and that I am a Jew. And my mom was like, I can't, like, you're 7. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
And my husband actually that was his childhood rabbi and he's still in touch with him. So this is reminding me, he wants to tell him this story. So that happened. And then when my parents believed it in like believer's baptism at 13, and I was really excited to do it. And then I hit 13 and I was like, oh, but I don't believe in Jesus. Like, this is a problem. So I didn't get baptized.
Yeah.
And then at 14, I was like, well, I'll try again because we had, oh my God, what do you call it after baptism? Confirmation. We had a confirmation class. So I was like, I'll try again. I'll do the confirmation class. And then at the end of the confirmation class, I can get baptized. And it was like a very liberal church. And they had a program, which actually I super approve of. I think it's great, much like Complicating Ideas, where they took the confirmation class to different religions, like a Hindu temple, a Jewish service, a Catholic service with a Protestant, with the idea that you were supposed to see all of the options and then choose, this as your option, right? So you weren't choosing from a place of like no knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Which is great.
You're going to a buffet with one item in it. No, you're seeing the whole buffet and you select.
Right. And it was great. And, everyone like then got confirmed at the end. Like, obviously, like it was great. But the general idea was you were going to be like, yes, the tradition of my family is the tradition I'm going to pick. So I went to the Jewish service, which was first. And then I dropped out of the class because I was like, well, that's where I'm supposed to be. So there's been a mistake. I can't like get confirmed. And then
to your credit, you didn't just go with the motion of the ocean,
No.
which would have been what 99% of kids would have done, even if they were feeling some friction. They would have been like, I'm just going to get through this, keep my head down. But for whatever reason, you were like, no.
Yeah. I mean, that's funny because like one other time I told this story, someone called out the same thing and I was like, oh yeah, that never occurred to me. I literally was like, can't do it. So then I went to NYU where there were a lot of Jews and, a friend, like Tashlik is, a Yom Kippur, you go and you toss pieces of bread in a moving body of water to get rid of your sins. And he was doing Tashlik and I really wanted to go. And so he took a lightsaber and like dumped me an honorary Jew for the day. And I went and did Tashlik. And obviously now I still remember this, right? And then, so whatever, I was around a lot of Jews. It was a very like Jewish environment, fine. And then the next sort of like pivot point is I'm 21 and I get on an airplane and I sit next to someone who I had noticed in the lobby actually because of the book he was reading. There was no one in the seat between us. Turns out he's Jewish. He's 7 years older than me. We end up having this like incredibly intense 3-hour long conversation, however long it takes to get to Chicago. Like we got moved to the back of the plane. The waitress or the like stewardess was like, could you like simmer down?
Yeah.
And he was like, we're not gonna. And so she put us like by the bathroom. Like
No way.
yeah, super. So anyway, we end up like talking on the phone and he's like a CEO, right? Like this doesn't make any sense. I'm 21, he's 28, he's a CEO. We end up talking on the phone for a month and then I fly up to San Francisco and go on a date with him where it becomes clear that I am in fact too young. But he was Jewish and it was like
For the shot. Was it a great date?
It was a great date. And it was a great date. He's now very successful. Like we're both on Zionist Twitter. We're not like I reached out to him recently, but we're not like but anyway, great human being.
100.
100. Keeping it 100. But that somehow like I swear to God, like imprinted or my soul like recognized like that's whatever. So from then on, I never with one exception, I dated Vanderbilt. Otherwise, I never date a non-Jew ever again. And I marry someone who's like like boom, boom, like also Jewish, also from Stanford, like whatever, whatever. The list goes on and on. So that looking back is this other moment where it was like something shifted, right? And like it goes a different direction. And like the people I date, like it becomes, and it's like such a faded, like the universe just like puts me in the seat on a plane, like whatever. And then I started dating my husband, who's Jewish. And I started the process of converting almost right away. It was very difficult about it. I argued. It took years. Um, but I was 25, newly 25, when I started my conversion process. And looking back, like I thought I was grown, right? But like 25-year-olds are babies. So converting was essentially the first sort of thing I did as a adult. And so I've been Jewish. I've been a practicing Jew basically since I was 25.
Holy smokes. Did you become a Jew when you were 25, or did it
No,
take a couple years, or
I
how long does it take?
I mean, it can take, it's like at least a year, if not more. I took 4 years. But so you're practicing that whole time. And I converted.
Is there like a baptism at the end, or like what's the thing? Like
It's
when do
the
you get
reverse.
in?
Yeah, it's the reverse actually, because baptism comes from the mikveh, the tradition of the mikveh in Judaism. So yeah, you like submerge in a body of water that's like a natural, like free flowing body of water. It can be inside or outside, but I did it outside in the Russian River. So yeah, you sit in front of a Jewish rabbinical court and you have to argue your case. And then I had a panic attack. A lot of people do. And then you like go in the mikveh and then you come out with your Jewish soul or your Jewish soul that you always had. Unfortunately, that's like too long to clip, but yeah, no one ever asked me that story. It's crazy, right?
Wow. Yeah, that's really crazy.
Yeah.
That's really insane. And the fact that you went to preschool with your husband, did you know each other then? Did you
We're
always know each other?
we knew each other in high school. We were like frenemies in high school. We played a married couple in our first play. But we were a year apart. I'm a year older. And so we like were like he dated my friends and I was like, ew, he's an underclassman, gross. So
Yeah.
we were not like in the same preschool class, but I'm sure we were familiar. But yeah, we went to preschool together. Crazy. And then we
Oh
started
my gosh.
in New York City. So like we weren't it's not like we just like stayed at home and dated a lot of other people in the meantime. So
Oh my gosh. You just said 25, you felt so old, but really they're babies. And I just went back for a reunion at my college, Franciscan University, and it hit me because everyone on campus seemed like a kid. And I was like, that's so funny because when I was there, I was really grown up. But now they all look so small.
my son is in 7th grade. Do you remember in 7th grade? In 7th grade, I was like, I am like basically an adult, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
I can
Uh,
like whatever, go do stuff, whatever. And I'm like, my son is an actual child, right?
it-
So we're like more like we like let him walk places by himself and whatever. Cause I'm like, I remember being in the 7th grade. Like if my parents had been like, you have to be at home and you have to like, I would have been like, but I'm grown. But
y-
yeah, your early 20s are crazy because I mean, I moved to New York City right after I turned 18. Um, so I had lived a lot of life when I was 21. I survived 9/11, like, um,
what
but
do you mean survive 9/11? Were you in the towers?
I was 5 blocks away at my home, at my dorm. And when the evacuation of Lower Manhattan was ordered by the city, NYU was the only. This is like the huge news story that like never was and needs to be a story. NYU was the only. They were the only building in downtown Manhattan that refused to participate in the mandatory evacuation. And they locked us in the building. And we were a bunch of
What?
yeah, we were a bunch of 19 to 21-year-olds. I actually recently found
5 blocks away?
yeah, I recently found like however bad you think it was worse. I recently found a video online that I didn't know existed taken from my building. And again, like you're like these kids are so young. My friends were watching people jump. Like, we had a direct view of the towers. My friends were watching people jump. My friends were watching people jump, and like to this day, this is why. You want to know why I'm writing about a meet cute at a shooting? Because I had a lot of trauma. To this day, I understand why this happened. They were like 20-year-old kids watching people jump to their death, and we thought we were going to die. Like, we were like, this is it. And they got like a handle of like vodka, the top of the fridge vodka in college, which is like
Yes.
the highest quality vodka that you keep for like beer pong,
a special occasion.
Special occasions, like surviving 9/11, and just like poured vodka, and like everyone like drank vodka as they were watching people jump. So we were trapped in the building as both towers fell. And when the second tower fell, the like seal on our building, because it was a high rise, the seal on the building broke, and like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, the building flooded with like ash and everything, right? And when the first tower went down, the building, we thought it was a bombing because I couldn't see what was going on. Like, the building like swayed back and forth. And these RAs, these poor RAs who were like 20-year-old, 21-year-old kids, were left in charge. And so the building had clearly been like structurally like impacted at that moment. And just started screaming, run. And so I ran down like 21 floors, and then we walked out all the way to the East Village, or the West Village. And then we couldn't go home for 2 weeks. We just had the clothes on our back. And when we
Where'd you go? Was the door, did you go back to your dorm, or was
No,
that place
that was
inhabitable?
It was you couldn't even get to that part of Manhattan. It was closed. NYU got us hotel rooms where they put us, like, roomed us with people that we didn't know. I ended up staying with a friend because, like, as you might expect, I just survived this like horrific trauma at 21. No really adults there paying any attention at all. And then they're like, just go in this hotel room and sleep in a room with someone you don't know. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. And then they gave us, I swear to God, they gave us $200 and said, use that, because we had nothing. We had no clothes. I happened to have 2 shirts because I had brought an extra shirt to cover my mouth. That was it.
Great thinking, actually. Yeah.
I mean, I hadn't brought it to wear. Like, we just had to.
Yeah.
And so they gave us $200 American. We didn't have our books. We didn't have our backpack. Like, forget clothes. Like, we had nothing. And they said, take this $200 and buy everything you need. I remember going to H&M and being like, what do you have for $1?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. How did you get a hold of your parents?
I couldn't. The phone lines went out, so I couldn't. And then eventually, I was able to call from a payphone.
You're right. That is the story that never was. That's crazy.
I mean, now it's like, I mean, someone asked me about it, like, things come in pairs or whatever. Someone asked me about it last week, and I was like, this should be like a reported, like, I should like pitch this to like the New Yorker. Like, so you will run into people every so often. Interestingly, randomly at my synagogue in Northern California, a friend of ours' sister lived in that building. She was like on the bus, so she wasn't in the building. And another friend of mine had a friend who was in the building who walked out. So like, this group of people that survived this trauma, and every so often you'll like run into one. But yeah, they should have been sued into the ground is what should have happened.
Yeah, someone made a very bad call, and somehow they weren't held accountable.
At one point I walked up, they were barring the doors with security guards, and I was like, you need to let us out. Like, there's been an evacuation order. And he said, all I can tell you is that if you walk out there, he was like, I'm not going to physically stop you. Though he was like physically stopping me, right? But he was like, talk about like coercion and intimidation, whatever. He was like, I'm not going to physically stop you, like tiny 100-pound girl. But I'm going to tell you that if you walk out that door, you will die. And I was like, okay, well, I was just thinking, I guess I won't walk out.
Yeah. I was just thinking I'd run for safety, actually.
Yeah, I was thinking I'd run uptown, but now that you put it that way, I guess I'll go sit with all these other like terrified. There was another dorm downtown, and they'd evacuated those people into our dorm. But she actually pointed and was like, if those kids came here for safety, you should feel safe. And I was like, those kids are literally covered with ash, and like staring into space, like they can't focus their eyes. Like, I don't feel great.
Yeah. I mean, in that security guard's defense, he's probably just parroting the line that they told him, like, hey, you got to keep these kids safe.
It was not the security guard's fault.
Someone at the top made a call, and thank goodness everyone in that building didn't die.
Correct. I mean, there were many moments that day, and now, like, looking back, we know more, but things kept falling, right? So they're like off the towers or whatever. So there were explosions. To this day, I just experienced it from inside. And we didn't know the first tower went down. I couldn't see it. So things would explode, and our rational thinking, which sounds crazy now, but at the time made sense, was that it was clear it was a terrorist attack, right? So we thought bombs had been planted because each time there would be like enough explosion.
Yeah.
And so we thought bombs had been planted, and we felt like reasonably sure that our building might be dead. I mean, so actually to loop it back to Bravery, I really think that event, which I rarely talk about, shaped like my entire adult life, because at 21, I was genuinely fairly sure that was it. Like, I was like everyone else in that building, I really didn't think I was going to walk out. Like, I thought that was it. I rarely talk about it. I'm getting a little emotional. But yeah, I really thought that was it. And I think the rest of my life has been built on the awareness that it can all come apart at any moment. Like, I was asleep in my bed, right? Like, I wasn't even at work. I was asleep. That it can all come apart at any moment. And so you might as well live. Like, what are you doing? Not taking the risk. What are you doing?
Whoa, that interpretation makes perfect sense to me. I can only imagine the building is 50-50, where it debilitated people for the rest of their lives to take risks because they're so worried and like PTSD. And then other people like you are like, I almost died. I escaped death. I got nothing to lose. I'm going for it.
Would be really interesting. I still am in contact with my roommate at the time, and she is an OBGYN. She's also a Black woman OBGYN, which I always think is like extra cool. I wrote about conversion. Talk about everything coming together. I wrote about conversion, like in a public essay, for the JTA about a year ago, and I never do.
What's JTA?
JTA is the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. It's basically the AP for the Jewish press. She
got it.
And she is now in the process of converting to Judaism. She was like, I didn't realize this. Like, I have a Jewish soul. And so our joke is that like that apartment was full of Jews and we did not know. But yeah, I don't know. Survived 9/11, convert to Judaism. I don't know, tell you. One of my other good friends from college also converted. So and there are not many converts to Judaism. Like, do not get me wrong. It's a tiny number of people, but this did not go where we thought it was going to go. Well, I mean, I assume that. No.
Meg, that was not on the show notes. I promise you. I'm actually just curious, just to highlight, and I'm kind of obsessed. I might be overdoing this, but this is just so fun to be able to. I want to see how many Jewish
converts are there?
Converts are there per year in America and the world?
Yeah, I'm curious. It's also like such a small percentage. The Jewish people are a tiny number, and then converts are like a tiny number. I wonder if it's going to be able to figure it out. There is actually like a...
Yeah, like, is it even documented where it can pull it up somehow?
Probably not where they can bring it up. We all have conversion certificates in their own file. Wow,
14 to 19,000 per year. That's actually a lot more than I would have thought.
Oh, decades old and always considered a high-end estimate. I was like, that sounds crazy.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah. Below, Israel has the cleanest numbers because the
yeah,
state tracks Orthodox
right.
conversions. 2000
And it's
ish
hard to get
certificates
that
were issued.
conversion process. Like if I moved to Israel, I would have to go through an Orthodox conversion process and they probably wouldn't do whatever. Yeah. So it's not super high. 1 in 6 is there are 2 million Jews in the US. I mean, there's a way to do that math.
Yeah, 1 in 5 would be 20%. So it's less than 20% of Jews.
In America, it's much less than Israel. Much, much lower.
Yeah, that makes sense. So,
I mean, the
so
difference
we just
is
said 14,000 is a high estimate,
really high.
and there's 620,000 people entering the Catholic Church. So that just
Right.
shows you how small I mean, it's so amazing when you're talking about a population like America where there's so many people. 14,000 actually is a teeny amount
Right.
of
It sounds
people when
big,
you're
but it's
thinking
not
about
big.
like
I
400 million people.
yeah, I'm guessing the way that was phrased, we're probably talking more like 7,000. Because that sounds like crazy high.
Yeah.
Um, and it's old, and there's not a lot of converts coming in right now, let me tell you. But Christianity is a proselytizing religion, right? Like Christians try to bring people in, and Jews try to keep people out. When I converted, my conversion advisor was really serious about it and was like, we consider it like an ethical dilemma to convert Jews because we were putting your life at risk, which at the time I was like, that's long gone. False. He would not sign off on my conversion until I was having nightmares about my children in the like my unborn children in the Holocaust. And that's like an essay I should write at some point because there are people who told me that they think that's like too much. And I think that is appropriate. Oh, I included that in my conversion essay. But yeah, so I mean, you're supposed to be turned away 3 times before you're accepted because like you have to the idea isn't it even that you have to want it, the idea is that you have to need it, that like you
Whoa.
have to already have a Jewish soul. There are some cases where they've only converted someone after they said to the rabbi, you can say yes or no, but I am living my life this way anyway because I am a Jew. So if you say no, then I guess I won't have the paperwork. And they're like, okay, well, we'll convert you now. So yeah.
Whoa.
hmm Crazy. I told 2 stories that I rarely tell on this podcast.
Fulfillment Project exclusive.
You need to clip
Meg.
them out somehow so I can share them, I guess.
Yeah, well, Ricky, will you turn them into segments, please? The great Ricky Enrico will get those clipped
Also
up for
make
us.
me look even cuter. Thank you, Ricky.
Impossible. Meg, bring us home. How do we wrap this up?
Ooh, we've covered some ground. How do we wrap this up? Live. I mean, I was gonna say like be brave, but I guess like the big takeaway is like live your life like you might wake up tomorrow and it's all over, or you think it's all over. So like whatever the risk is that you're like, I'll put it this way. I have always lived, or since then, lived with the philosophy that I would no regrets, but not in the way people talk about it. In that I do not want to regret not having tried something and not knowing the answer. So, for example, I tried being an actor in New York City. I did not like it. And so now I never have to say like maybe I could have been
Yeah.
an actress and I didn't pursue it. I pursued it to the end of the point where I was interested. And then I was like, I don't like this and I'm going to do something else. So I just don't want to regret the choices I didn't make. Right. Like
Yeah.
I would rather go on the crazy date and risk being chopped up and put in a garbage bag or whatever, do it for the plot, I guess. But seriously, like just take the risk. Like, what do you have to lose? You are risking more by not doing it. So just be scared and do it anyway.
I have to ask the follow-up because I think that's really good advice. As trite and pithy as it is, I think it's really true, and people need to ignore the fact that it sounds like a bumper sticker and actually take it to heart
Sure.
and do it. But like, what if most people don't know what the hell that is because they've been so numbed by their life, by their 9 to 5, by their whatever they have to do to survive and raise their family. And that, what do you say to those people? Any practical advice or tips
Yeah,
you can tell them on how to discover?
yeah, my first tip, or the first thing I tell people is ask them if they've been daydreaming recently. Like literally daydreaming, like when you stare into space like you do when you're a kid and you like imagine
Yeah.
stuff, where you're like, what if I had a pony in the backyard? Um and usually the answer with adults is no, especially if you're feeling really sort of dead into the world. So I always just say, like, take 5 minutes a day, maybe when you're falling asleep. Like, it doesn't have to be like scheduled time, you know? Take 5 minutes a day and daydream. And daydream, this sounds like Alice in Wonderland, but like daydream impossible things. When I did this exercise for myself, I remember being like, what if I had a carousel in my backyard? Um, and then I just like imagined having a carousel in my backyard.
Yeah.
I didn't need a carousel in my backyard. I didn't wake up and be like, can you buy a carousel? Just like literally spend 5 minutes a day daydreaming. And that I think is the first part of like leaking in that part of your brain that has been dormant. And because sometimes being brave is not like, please don't like quit your day job and like live on the street. Do you know what I mean? But like also being brave can be like speaking out for something when it feels uncomfortable, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like upending your life. But yeah, try daydreaming because it probably, if you're not daydreaming a little bit, you're probably completely disconnected from like what your actual wants and needs are.
That's such good advice. That's all we got. I'm going to drop all your links in the show notes, Meg, for people to find you and read more. And last word, anything else?
Just go forth and do something. I don't care what it is.
Go forth and do. Meg, thanks so much for joining Fulfillment Project.
It was great to be here.
Hey, everyone. Quick 10-second ask from you. If you're digging the show and you're watching on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up and comment your favorite part. If you're listening on Spotify, please give this show a 5-star rating. On iTunes, please leave a quick review. If you're listening on Substack, please subscribe and join the comments. You may want to subscribe in a few different places. For example, YouTube, you get all of our short content, 60-second to 90-second clips, our segments where we segment out 1 to 6 minute different segments of each episode. And then if you subscribe on the Substack, I summarize the episode in a newsletter. You can read it in a couple minutes. And then a couple days after the episode, I put out a self-reflection guide to help you personalize the content to your life. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Please share it with a friend.